I got to say that pretty much my entire career is made up of happy accidents and outrageous fortune and bold faced lies. Beginning in high school when I was on the debate team and also in the marching band. I had a friend who was also debate team marching band. There came a time when there was going to be a debate tournament and a concert, stage band concert. Neither teacher was going to let my friend off. She was a better debater than I was, and she was a better musician than I was. She was playing piano on what they used to call a stage band, jazz ensemble. She came to me, I don't know why, with a folder full of charts from the big band and said, "Can you cover me for the stage band concert that's coming up in 5 days?" I had just read a book about Teddy Roosevelt, and I was still ringing with his stuff. And among the things that he said in there was, when asked if you can do a thing, reply at once, "Why, certainly I can," and then find out how. So I said, "Why, certainly I can." And I looked in the folder. I'd never seen a chart before. What is a G little M7 with slashes under it? I thought it was some kind of car. And I thought, well, I'm in now. So I went to the band teacher and I said, "You're in a lot of trouble." "Why?" I said, "Because in 5 days, I'm your piano player on the jazz band concert. What are these?" And he paled, and then he recovered, and he said, "I'm going to give you an album of the tunes that we're doing on this concert." This was back in like 71 when Sammy Nestico had just published all of the Basie Band charts that Basie had just released. This one was Have a Nice Day from 71. And he gave me the album. He said, "Take this home and God help us all." So I took it home and I put the record on and I left the charts aside and I just listened to the first tune until I pretty much understood how it went. And then I sat at the piano and I put the chart up and I know how to count. I can do that. Now, there were 4 bars in, and that is a G little M7. I know that's right. So that's what it must be. So I kind of backed into it. So it was a happy accident, an outrageous lie. And fortune came when I got away with it.
I think song selection is one of the reasons why I indulged in becoming a singer. It's kind of what drives me. I think being a singer is secondary to the importance of the material. And so I'm not looking at things that are necessarily about how they sound. I'm interested in the story. And a lot of songs say something to me that maybe they don't say to other people. So it's a very personal choice when you decide that you like a song. I really enjoy songs that talk about something either that isn't discussed in a song very often or hasn't been approached from that particular angle before. I also really enjoy finding things that haven't been done by many other people, recorded many, many times, for instance. And there's a treasure trove of wonderful songs, even by famous composers, that have not been done very often, and that I think benefit from being aired out once in a while. And I just enjoy putting these together as a kind of a cross section of things to draw from to create different kinds of shows, different evenings of entertainment, because you can approach things from a historical perspective. You can concentrate on one composer, or you can concentrate on a certain period of time, or you can just pick things that will just work for a mood for a specific event. I like being able to take these songs and make them work in many different contexts.
I've been with the Wolverines Big Band. My first gig with them was in 1980, 44 years ago. So I'm still kind of one of the new guys. The band celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. That also was a happy accident. I got on the band because of my keyboard. The band had had a standing gig at the old Scotty's downtown, the old Forum. And they were using a piano that belonged to, I guess, the shopping center. It was a nice grand. But they had to move it every time they used it. And in moving it, they scratched it. And the management that owned the piano said, "That's it, you're done using that piano." And just about then, I had gotten a call to sub one night. I had hounded and stalked the band for 2 or 3 years. And the leader, Forberg, said, "By the way, do you have a keyboard?" I said, "Yeah, I just got a brand new one." He said, "Okay." So I showed up and set up, and it went, pretty well, given all my flaws and inconsistencies. And I thought, well, maybe that buys me another try. And Forberg called back and said, "Can you sub this date?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "The band liked the sound of your keyboard much better than the sound of the first call guy's keyboard. So if you want to, you're on." The first real gig where I was kind of first call was around 1980 at the opening of the then brand spanking new Minnesota Public Radio building downtown. I was attracted to the band because they played a lot of Ellington and Basie of the late 50s and early 60s, which I think was just the deepest, thickest, swingingest stuff they ever did. And I've never had lessons. I've never had any formal training at all, musically. I learned more on this band. Of course, it's taken 44 years, but I can't think of another single source where I could have learned more. I continue to be wild about the band because of that same book that I first heard and first played with them. The book on the Wolverines is about 5,000 charts deep. We only carry 1,500 in the road book. There isn't another band that can authentically cover pre-1920 through, wow, really, a lot of original compositions, a lot of good composers in the band, a lot of great arrangers in the band, guys who knew enough to spell out the piano chords, write them out note for note when the going got thick with some of the Ellington stuff. Steve Benson, one of the best arrangers, was aware that I would not know how to authentically voice an Ellington change. So he wrote them out, and I could go on. I was and am the most enthusiastic about that band because of what it is. I don't think there's another band that can authentically sound like what its book contains.
I think that I benefited from having more emotional depth than technical skill when I began singing. It took me a very long time to just get the basic uh, skill set together. And so while I was doing that, I completely relied on the emotional storytelling part of the craft of singing to an audience to to kind of get me over. And now that I'm more, now that I have more choices about what to do technically, I realize that that's sometimes at cross purposes with telling the story. So I have so many years of experience now of putting the story first that I think it's easier for me to keep that in check. And uh, and certainly at this point, I know that that's what's rewarding about the entire endeavor is being able to connect with people and tell a story and have them uh, afford them the experience of experiencing the emotion themselves.
Playing on London and New York stages. I know I've been at this for about 50 years now, and I'd say 25 years ago it might have made me nervous until I discovered that they're all just another gig. Am I going to play differently because I'm on stage in London than I would if I was in the saloon at Maggie's up at Kroner's? No. I do the best I can all the time, no matter where it is. Um, the pianos and the sound systems are generally better at places in London and New York. In fact, the last time we were in New York at Jazz at Lincoln Center, I think that I played the only good piano in New York. All the rehearsal pianos were junk. The cabaret that we played after later in the week, it was like playing on broken teeth. Um, but no, is any one gig going to change my life? No, not unless a happy accident followed up by an outrageous lie happens. But the conjunction of those two is rare. Um, Memorable? I remember them, certainly, because from the piano bench, I looked around and said, what am I doing here? And that was a lot of fun. But really, they're just all another gig. The mission is to elicit an emotional response from the listener. And that's what I try to do, even if I don't think anyone's listening.
These grants have really provided an education for me that was not possible otherwise. The McKnight Foundation gave me the ability to digitize my entire music library, including sheet music, charts, gave me the ability to organize it and sort it and share it with other musicians. It's invaluable, and I use that every single day. Um, and the Minnesota State Arts Board grants were really professional projects that I would not have been able to afford to do on my own. Very important things like working with wonderful professionals in New York to put together my first New York show and work with a living composer, which was an invaluable experience to survey someone's entire output and then put together a show with their input. And then also commissioning big band arrangements so that I would have the experience of singing with a big band.
Catherine Crosby was a different thing. Catherine, of course, is Bing's widow, a star in her own right, and a singer, albeit, even by her own admission, a very limited one. She sings by rote, by muscle memory. She has maybe a 1 octave range. And she got booked to come to the Heights Theater in Columbia Heights and do her cabaret show that she had worked up with the help of Dolores Hope, Bob Hope's widow. They knocked together a little cabaret show of stories and songs, and her fee was that the club had to buy a certain number of her self-published books about Bing. So I got involved somehow, I think maybe through Arnie Fogel. And we're running things over in the theater, and I'm having trouble with her opening number because I'd never heard it before, and I only learned by ear. And she had a lead sheet, but I don't read. And insult to injury, it was in the key of B. Now, to a jazzer, or at least to this one, that key is the work of the devil. It's not a civilized or godly or proper or genteel key. It's almost all the sharps there are. And I'm scared of sharps. So we're working on this thing, and I said, well, give me a minute now. I can't read. And into a hot mic at soundcheck, she said, oh, shit. But she didn't fire me, and she didn't throw a fit, and she didn't demand a replacement. And we worked on it a bit, and she did some other tunes, but I knew those, so we were okay. But the hard part about this opening tune was that she wanted me to play the melody. Now, as an accompanist, that runs directly against my grain. You stay off the singer's note. That's their job. You'll trap them if you play their notes. So it was a 6/8 thing, like an old London music hall. And I thought, I can do that, but I can't play the melody too. And so she knew I was nervous about it, and we're up in the green room, and we're about to come on. And we're coming down the stairs to go on. And I'm following her. And as we get to the landing, she stops. And she turns just over her shoulder to me and sings the song one more time. And said, got it? And I said, got it. That was gracious. I learned something about the old stars that day. They were gracious. They were generous. They were tolerant. They had class. She didn't have to put up with me at all. She could have ranted at Fogo, made him pick up the phone and get any number of piano players in this town who can read fly specks at 400 yards. She didn't do that. And I learned that is something to emulate. I'm unable to do it yet, but at least I know it's there.
That was nice. I realize now how fortunate I was to meet Richard Rodney Bennett at the time that I did, because he opened the world musically to me, and also the world of just being a collegial fellow musician to me, because he invited me to see what it was like to be him. It was an amazing experience to just observe what his musical life, what his personal life was like, what he was interested in, and who he spent time with. And his musical education had started with classical music. He wrote film scores. He always kept the Great American Songbook in his back pocket, and he was a great accompanist for jazz singers. And so my ability to understand different types of music and connect them to what I was doing really improved because of that exposure. But mostly, I think he taught me what it is like to give your life to this endeavor, and how to sustain it, and how to know yourself better as a musician. I think that I'm much more comfortable. I'm more comfortable in this role than I was before I met him. And his music, now that he's gone, is an endless source of joy, because I'm able to feel like I'm spending time in his company and continuing to learn from him. And his compositions are so endlessly interesting to me.
Yeah, his stuff is really stellar. They first met because she had released a recording of a tune that he particularly liked and didn't think anyone else knew. And he read about it, and he read about her in a cabaret organization newsletter. And he called her up and said, "How do you know this tune?" And that they became friends, actually. And they were both huge fans of Noel Coward, for whom Richard had actually played on Coward's 70th birthday. And he invited her out. He said, "Come stay in my apartment for a couple of days. There's a show downtown of Coward's personal effects. Let's go see it." So she did, and he had two pianos in his huge Upper East Side place, and they worked on music, and they became friends, and they cooked together. And she won't tell you this, but Richard's last performance on this earth was accompanying Maud at St. Peter's downtown on 54th and Lex on Billy Strayhorn's piano. One of the biggest regrets of my life is that I did not go with he invited me to come too, but we were financially strapped at the time, and I didn't think I could do it. And if I had one thing in my life to do again, it would have been that. I never actually met Madeline Pelou. I am a big fan of hers since her very first album came out, and for the same reason as I'm a fan of my other heroes, Warren Vache and those guys. She is elegant, she's understated, she connects to the lyric, she sings the story, she acts the story. I just love her approach and her style. And I was playing something at the Dakota a few years ago, and had no idea that she was in the audience. And somebody later told me, "Wow, she just loved you." And I was kind of floored. So she's an unwitting fan of mine, I guess is the best way to put it. Uh, what else is there to say about that? Nothing.
Winning a Bistro Award was interesting because it made me think about what I've been doing and what people get recognized for. And I'm not sure that it has any impact on me. It certainly is a nice thing to be able to put on my resume. But I guess it's really a nice vote of confidence because if there's one thing that I'm enjoying right now, it's getting to a point of feeling very sure of my path. This is something I've been pursuing for a long time, and for many years, I didn't have much confidence in it as a viable thing for me to be doing. But now I realize that it makes perfect sense. My life makes sense, and I enjoy having some kind of affirmation from the outside world that tells me that. Luckily, I get it from audiences all the time, and that's how I kind of take stock of what's happening and what I should be doing. And this particular project, I guess, was satisfying to get an award for because it's an award for this wonderful happenstance. It's a record of this lucky thing that happened to me. That I got to work with this wonderful composer, and it allows me to put that music back out into the world for people who may not have heard it, and that makes me very happy.
Also, and she won't tell you this, but it's not a popularity contest, the Bistro Award. It's not a poll, how many people think this is this stuff. This is a critics award. Now, the Bistro is an organization of critics and writers. And somehow, for me, that packs a whole lot more of a wallop than a beauty contest, popularity contest. Um, it affirms for both of us, again, that the mission is to move someone emotionally. If we can look out in the audience and see someone crying while she does I'll Never Smile Again, we're home. That's a hit. We are fans of each other. All else aside, we've been married for 20 years. All else aside, she is my favorite singer.
And I should say too that this project could never have been done without you. There's a definite flavor to the way that we choose to make music together that doesn't happen with other people.
It's how we stayed married for 20 years. And also how we continue to perform and love to perform together after 20 years. I mean, the streets are knee deep in the wreckage of married couples who couldn't do both. And so I guess it's yet another vindication.
Yeah.
I was right.
Thank you so much to the University Club for hosting us today. This could not be a more beautiful place.
If we could afford it, we'd be members here.
Yes.
If we could afford it, I'd keep an apartment here as my townhouse.
Would they let you?
Only if they didn't know certain things.
Okay.
But isn't there a cooler place? I mean, I've played here over the last 50 years. I can't tell you how many times. And it's just consistently cool. And we love the place.
Yes.